Welcome back. Today, we're actually revisiting another one of my older colorways. This is one I retired because we ran into a little bit of an issue where it wasn't dyeing as far into the skein as I wanted it to. And when we cake up the yarn, what we would see is it would be nice and dark on the outside of the cake and the inside would be super duper light. So if you were trying to make a sock or something like that, you would find that one of the socks would be really, really dark and the other sock would be super duper light. Definitely a problem, especially when we're talking to sock knitters. But this is one of those colorways that I needed to re-release. It is way too beautiful to leave as is. So this one is called Silent Night. If you've seen this one before, this is a revision, Silent Night 2, if you will. It is a beautiful, stunning colorway with lots of blues. What I decided to do here is we're going to crank it up a little bit. So normally when I'm doing these dyes, I do 3 jugs of dye, if you will. So you've got 1 jug, 2 jugs, and then a little bit of a mix of color, and you would see me split it up into thirds. On this one, I wanted to go really, really dark, and when I was trying to do that assigned pooling colorway, I cranked it up to 4 jugs, and I really found it saturated really, really well into the yarn. So I'm going to try that again. We've got some of this dark twilight blue that I've kind of mixed in here. It's got, the dye is actually called Twilight. Now, I generally don't run dyes as is. I always mix them up with something. So this Twilight I have mixed up with a little bit of charcoal and a little bit of gunmetal to darken it up a little bit. We've tossed some gray down at the end just to give it a little bit of contrast because I don't want it to be a completely blue colorway. If you've seen the inspiration for this one, it is a dark blue sky, and then there's some white snow, a little bit of stuff going on there, and then over and above that you've got some pine trees, some Christmas trees, if you will. Just kind of sitting off in the distance. So on this side, we've gone dark blue, a little touch of gray. That gray, I've said in the past, it's not necessarily there to be gray, but it is definitely there to add just a little depth to the colorway itself. So now that we've got this cooked off, we cooked it for about 10 minutes on the one side. We are going to have a little bit of this blue kind of bleeding out into the pot, and that's fine. This blue here is extremely saturated. I really cranked up the recipe. I wanted to make sure that we got this dye as deep as we possibly could in order to get some even dyeing throughout the skein. I've said before, we want that dye to go down at least, bare minimum, 50% through the skein in order to make sure that we're not running into some white spots where there's not supposed to be white spots. So really crank this recipe up. We did change it up a little bit too. It is not going to be matchy with the original Silent Night. I would consider this one a standalone Silent Night. So if you're trying to match up to some old stock that you've got sitting around, definitely, well, you know what, it would probably pair up nicely, but it is not the same colorway. We've really changed it up here. So now that we've got that done, we've got a little bit of chestnut thrown in here. This is a representation of the trees in the inspiration. And then we're going to take and throw just a little bit more gray in here. Absolutely beautiful. Gray, chestnuts, blues, they all play so well together. But ultimately what I'm going for is just that super duper saturated dark blue that we've got in the pots there. On this side, it is a tad bit lighter. We wanted a little bit of depth on that portion. I did not want, it to be the exact same blue all the way through. So we've got 3 on the front that are the dark blue, same color. And on the back, we've got something just a little bit more towards the gray side of things. And then what we're going to do is really crank it up a notch. We're going to add a little bit of chestnut sprinkles. One of my favorite sprinkles is the chestnut sprinkle. Just the way it drops in the pot is beautiful. It's more of a granular dye rather than a powdered dye. So they're all powder, technically speaking, but the way they fall off the spoon, if we're talking like a mouse gray, it kind of falls down in clumps. It's like the dye sticks to itself. The chestnut really sprinkles out, and you get a whole bunch of different colors out of a chestnut. You'll get a little bit of red, a little bit of blue, a little bit of browns, yellows. Like it's really got this just combination of sprinkles in it, and I'll see if I can't do a little bit of a close-up here and show you the sprinkles once we get this dried up. But now that we've cooked it off on this side, get it pulled out. You can see the steam coming off. It is nice and hot. It is not boiling, but it's close. And there's definitely a little bit of blue dye left in the pots here. Not a ton, but definitely a little bit. So as you can see, it is mostly clear, not 100% clear. We're going to give this a quick rinse and it should clear itself up easy peasy. No residue, nothing like that. So on to the skeiner, the Hank Twister, if you will. This here is our chunky base. I did do this colorway on all 4 of our bases again. I really enjoyed that last video where I was able to showcase all 4. This is our chunky weight base. It's very vibrant. It really picked up the colors extremely well. I know you can't really see it here. I'm going to show you in the light box in a couple seconds here, but it really just, it jumps out. All those colors. That blue is so rich in our chunky base. Up beside that, we have our worsted weight base. Definitely just as pretty, but not quite as vibrant as the chunky base. The chunky base really picked it up this round, that's for sure. Oh my goodness, I don't even know what to say. Lost for words. That never happens, right? So we've got our worsted base twisted up. It is 100% merino, exactly the same as our chunky base. And that's something that's never really clicked with me. Like if the base is exactly the same, if they're both 100% merino, they came from the same batch, why does the chunky base pick it up differently than the worsted base? That just doesn't make sense. Same with our DK and fingering weight. So this is our DK weight, which is an 80-20 merino nylon blend. It tends to have a little bit more white than our fingering weight base. They're exactly the same base. They're both 80-20 merino nylons. So I don't quite get it. Maybe it's the thickness of the yarn. They both go into the soak for the same amount of time. We use the exact same amount of dye. It all came from the exact same batch, but each base tends to have its own characteristics. So get this twisted up again. There's lots of blue in this one. If you've got our original Silent Night, there was a lot more gray to it. We only did like 2 jugs of the dark blue across the top, and then we did some gray down the rest of it with a little bit of chestnut. This one here was 4 jugs of that dark blue. So that dark blue is really, really coming through. Here we've got that fingering weight base, 80-20 merino nylon, superwash, of course, 19.5 micron fiber, the whole works. Super duper soft. Up next to that, we've got that DK weight base. You can see there's a little bit more white to it. It's just the tiniest little bit lighter than the fingering weight base. The fingering weight really pulled that blue out and kind of saturated across the yarn. And then look at this chunky weight. It is like fantastically bright blue clouds. It is stunning. I love this. I can't wait to see somebody make something out of this chunky weight. It is going to be incredible. A hat or something, some fingerless gloves. I don't know. So many possibilities. I am beyond excited to get this going. So into the swatcher, we have our worsted weight base. We're going to take a little peek at this. You can see there's a little bit of spiraling going on, not a ton. That is perfectly fine. We've got about 44 stitches around off the top of my head. So this is going to... It would work up absolutely beautifully. Like it would be a highly variegated yarn if we're talking about a cardigan or something like that, or a blanket. But if you're looking at probably a pair of socks, we would get a awesome spiraling going on. And I hope somebody does a pair of socks in these and shows me, because I really think that that's going to be kind of a cool pattern. So into the light box with that swatch, you can see that blue's really coming through. We've got that chestnut kind of sprinkled throughout, and then you've actually got your chestnut sprinkles in there as well. And that's where you're starting to see kind of the dark stitches in there. That you can see the chestnut sprinkles up here in the chestnut color. It's got a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, a little bit of red, and that's really showing throughout the swatch. So happy that came through, absolutely. Worsted weight base, we're going to cake this up real quick. I think the worsted was about as close as we could get it to the fingering weight base. I think it would be the median for this colorway. So I'm going to cake up the worsted weight base. Onto the Swift, if I can. I always get it tangled up on the arms. I don't know why. I wish the Swift would just kind of, tuck itself in real tight, but the umbrella Swift kind of sticks out just a little bit. And for whatever reason, I tend to get some strands hooked on it. So This is our worsted weight base. I already said that. It has 2 ties on it, so I'm going to slow this down a little bit. I know everybody kind of enjoys that. My only suggestion is when you're cutting these, get close to the knot. Find that knot and then just right next to the knot itself, and then you don't have to worry about, accidentally snipping a strand that you don't mean to strand. That you don't mean to snip, my bad. All right, so here we've got a tie around and then the 2 ends of the hank itself. We've got the start and the finish. This one here kind of looks like it tucks in behind, maybe? Yes, it does. All right, so we can see here it tucks in behind on the back side. We're going to pull that through, wrap it around, not too many times. I've noticed if I wrap it too many times, it kind of gets hung up. We're going to try 2 times. 3 times? I don't know. 3 times. Should come off nice. And then on the other side here, we have the front of the skein, the start. So we can see it's all the way on the front of the entire hank. It's not tucked in behind or anything like that. Into the twister, I always like to pull off a good 3-4 inches. Nothing too much. You don't want too big of a tail. And just kind of get wrapped around 3 times here into the slot. And then, it kind of dangles down far enough that it's going to get tied up into the cake. In my last video, I kind of left the yarn kind of hanging down there, and I noticed it didn't look as pretty. I had to tuck too many strands in, so I'm going to pull everything up into the center, get it tucked into the start of the cake there, and I think that'll clean it up really, really nice here. So, get this cranked up. I'm not going to make you sit through it. Of course, it is a wonderful, satisfying experience to watch a cake being made, but I don't want to hold on to you guys for too long. So, get this spun up. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Nice saturation throughout the entire cake. It does not look like we've got that lightness coming through in the center of the cake. I'll toss this in the light box, and we'll go into it just a little bit further when I'm talking about the inside and the outside of the cake having that faded look to it. So everything's beautiful, beautiful here. Into the light box, you can see we've got lots of different colors. We've got that dark blue, the gray, the white, and there's some speckling in there. You can see there's just a little bit of red there. That's normal for a chestnut sprinkle, for sure. Okay, so when I'm talking about fading, I'm talking about the center of the skein to the outside of the skein here. If there is a huge color difference, like you're seeing lots of color on the outside and just it's really, really faded on the inside, or the opposite, that's an indication that you didn't mix the batch well enough. So that the dye didn't get deep enough into it, and it just really creates some issues when you're working on those multi-skein projects or socks or things like that. On to the pairings, one of my favorite here. So first up, we've got Silent Night, of course. Beside that, we have Life Begins After Coffee. I'm going to roll this a little bit just to show that chestnut so that we can see why I picked these ones. The Life Begins After Coffee, the browns really play quite well with the chestnut in there. Beside that, we have Monkey See, Monkey Do, one of our newer colorways. I find that this is a little bit lighter. It's got those same browns as coffee. And then beside that, we have the First Frost. I do tend to pick the First Frost a lot because it is a very, very simple skein. It's only got a little bit of brown, a little bit of black speckling, and then the rest of it is ecru undyed. So really holds quite well if you're looking at a fade. On the other side of things, when I was looking at this one, I really wanted to go with some blues, but I found those browns were calling me at the same time. So I've kind of mixed this up a little bit. Here we have Driftwoods. I find that the chestnut really pairs into the browns here. And then we've got that blue hint in there. So moving on next to that, we have Adventure Awaits, which is more of those blues. They really just kind of come through. If you were looking at all 6 of these, I don't know what I would do with all 6, to be honest, but I kind of like how it goes from light to dark to light. It feels right for whatever reason. This is the fade I would go with if I was going with a fade. On to the semi-solids. So Silent Night up first, of course, and then beside that, I would probably look at the chestnut. It's really quite close. I think these two pair really, really well together. 2 skein project, I'd probably look at the chestnut or the Midnight. Midnight's up beside that. Those blues are beautiful together. They're very nice complementary colors. And I honestly think they're probably my top picks. Now, up beside that, we have dark blue. I know the Midnight's darker, but this is what we call dark blue. It's a really nice shade of blue. It's a little bit lighter than the dark blue that's in Silent Night, so I think those pair up really, really, really nice. And then beside that, we have the charcoal. Charcoal and this dark blue go absolutely beautifully together. I love them. If I was thinking about going, a little splash of color or something like that, I don't know why, but this forest green's just jumping out at me, right? Like, it matches up with that chestnut really, really well, and then it's a nice contrast to the dark blue in Silent Night. I don't know. The green and the blue, they're calling out to me and saying, hey, if you're looking for a splash of color, choose me. It is time for that big reveal. So, Silent Night version 2, stunning colorway, lots of blues, little bit of gray, some chestnut sprinkle. This colorway has it all. I love it so much. It's been gone for a little while. It is back. Well, its brother is at least. Knitted Swatch, as always, last photo of every single listing. And there's that reveal. Beautiful blue sky, some pine trees. Stunning, stunning Christmas colorway. Thank you for stopping by. I hope to see you again next time.